It's only natural for a man to cheat if he's sent away on a solo assignment. You should have been prepared for that when you arrowed it. No way, it's such a hassle. We get divorced. I don't need you anymore. My husband, a high school teacher, was assigned to a solo post in a remote area. Since it coincided with our daughter's start of high school, he had no choice but to work away from home. At first, he kept in touch frequently, but gradually the contact dwindled until he stopped responding to me altogether. Then one day, he admitted to cheating and demanded a divorce. I asked him to wait a year since our daughter was in the middle of her college entrance exams, but he applied for the divorce and the notice was sent to me anyway. I received silent calls and harassment letters from his mistress, which made me furious. Then my husband came home with his mistress and their illegitimate child. As I struggled to figure out how to deal with his insensitivity, my daughter spoke up to the mistress.
What? Dad, you didn't know?
With each word my daughter spoke, the mistress's face grew paler. What my daughter revealed was shocking. My name is Emily. In my 20s, I married Keith, a high school teacher, and we had a daughter named Lily. Keith's job required frequent transfers, making it difficult for me to continue working, so I quit my job. Since Lily was still very young, I didn't consider solo assignments and followed Keith to each new location as a stay-at-home mom. 20 years into our marriage, Keith was ordered to transfer to a remote island. By then, Lily had grown up and was about to start high school. Entering high school meant preparing for college entrance exams. It would be difficult for Lily to commute from a remote island to a mainland high school, and narrowing her college options wouldn't be good for her. Lily is about to start high school, and she's already working hard on her exam studies, right? She's been through a lot with all the school transfers, and with college entrance exams in sight, I'm torn about following you on this transfer. What do you think, Keith? I think I should take this assignment alone for Lily's sake. The college entrance exam period is delicate, and staying at the same high school on the mainland would be best for her. Are you sure you'll be okay? I'll be fine. I'm not a child, you know. Take care of Lily for me. After discussing it with Keith, we decided he would move to the remote island alone, while Lily and I stayed on the mainland. I was worried about his first solo assignment, but as Keith said, he's not a child. I trusted that he would be fine. Keith moved to the remote island. At first, he called me every single night. He was considerate, checked in on Lily, and often talked with her. However, after 2 months passed, the calls became weekly, then monthly, and eventually, he stopped answering my calls altogether. I thought he might be busy. He was probably enjoying the freedom of living alone. Even though I tried to reassure myself, I couldn't shake the worry. Keith would come home for summer break and Christmas holidays, but he still wouldn't answer my calls. Why don't you answer the phone? I call because I'm worried. Even if it's a hassle, please answer so I don't worry. When I confronted Keith during his holiday visit, he responded irritably. I have a lot of social obligations. The island has close-knit community events and frequent get-togethers. Still, you could at least call back or send a message, right? We're living apart, and I worry about your health. Please stay in touch. Stop nagging. I'm busy, so what do you expect? Let's just end this conversation. Keith became increasingly dismissive, not wanting to talk about it. Around this time, I noticed large sums of money being withdrawn from our joint account every month. I was concerned about the suspicious money withdrawals, so despite Keith's annoyance, I decided to ask him about it. Hey, you've been withdrawing large amounts of money from our account. What's that for? It's a problem if you take money without telling me. Oh, that. I have to pay an environmental tax to protect the island's landscape. I've never heard of such a tax. Emily, you wouldn't know since you don't live on the remote island. There was no such thing as an environmental tax. Later, I confirmed there was no such tax on the remote island where Keith lived. Overhearing Keith's flimsy excuse, Lily laughed and joked. Dad, you're having an affair, aren't you? Lily's comment was really just a joke, but Keith turned red with anger.
Don't be ridiculous. Do you have no respect for your father? Stop saying such nonsense.
Standing up and shouting, Keith dramatically overturned the table, spilling the food everywhere. Lily and I were stunned, and poor Lily, who had only been joking, shrank back and murmured, "I'm sorry." Even when he had the chance to spend time with the family after a long absence, Keith would secretly look at his phone, showing no intention of valuing family time. The word affair that Lily mentioned kept nagging at me. 2 years passed since Keith's solo assignment to the remote island. That year too, Keith temporarily returned to the mainland for Christmas. As I reluctantly sorted through the stuff Keith had left behind, a photo slipped out. When I looked at it, I saw a young woman holding a baby, smiling with Keith. Shocked, I confronted Keith. "Keith, what's this photo? A colleague or a friend? You look awfully close." "Oh, that's my mistress."
What?
Keith casually admitted the affair while fiddling with his phone, as if making small talk. Lily, who was in the same room, was also shocked and widened her eyes.
What? Dad, you're having an affair.
That's what I said.
Why? Betraying your family is the worst. Mom trusted you when she let you go. Yeah, why an affair? How could you?
Lily was furious, and I was distressed. Keith clicked his tongue at us.
It's because you didn't support me. It's only natural for a man to cheat if he's sent away on a work away from home. You should have been prepared for that when you allowed it. You used Lily as an excuse not to support me. You said it would be better for Lily that you chose to go alone. We decided on this together. Don't say such things now. Plenty of men don't cheat even when they live apart from their family. Dad, you're the one who's wrong, so don't blame us.
As the three of us argued loudly, Keith finally exploded with emotion.
Enough. This is why, because of this family, I ended up with this circumstance. We get divorced. I don't need you anymore.
As Keith said this, he snatched the photo of his mistress and the baby from me and showed it to Lily and me.
My mistress works at a bar on the island. Look, isn't she cute? She's young and cute, unlike you. Know your place and step aside, old woman.
Keith then went to another room, and Lily started to cry. While comforting Lily, I thought long and hard about him, and eventually came to a conclusion.
Please wait until Lily finishes her college entrance exams.
Ha! You need the money, huh? Keith laughed mockingly, and I was deeply disappointed in how truly awful he was. After that, Keith returned to the island, but soon after, we started receiving persistent silent phone calls that disrupted Lily's studies. We also received anonymous mail, and when we opened it, there was a letter that said, "I hope you fail." I angrily told Keith to stop the harassment, but he said it was the mistress's doing, not his. Keith said, "She's just doing this because she loves me too much." It's kinda cute, sounding completely delusional and impossible to reason with. This is the punishment for you two treating me badly. Just accept it. With that, he ended the call, leaving me helpless. Later, a divorce form arrived, and I felt completely drained. The next year, Lily was accepted into her first-choice college. Despite her father's affair and the harassment from his mistress, she worked hard and persevered. I was relieved that Lily's life was getting closer to what she had envisioned, but even when I told Keith about it, he didn't send a single congratulatory message. In March, Keith returned from the remote island, but with him were his mistress and a 2-year-old child. I couldn't believe he would come back with his mistress and their illegitimate child. I looked at Keith with disgust, but he didn't seem to care and puffed out his chest arrogantly. My priority is this family now. Be grateful I waited the whole year. Today is the end. We're getting divorced. Finally, some peace. Keith rambled on and on. His mistress smiled beside him. As I struggled to figure out how to respond, Lily came out of her room and smiled at the mistress. "Long time no see, Teacher Megan."
What? Teacher?
The mistress's name was Megan. Keith looked bewildered, staring blankly at both Megan and Lily. Seeing this, Lily showed an unexpected expression.
What? Dad, you didn't know?
With every word Lily spoke, Megan's face grew paler and paler. Glancing at the silent Megan, Keith furrowed his brows and asked, "What are you talking about? What kind of teacher was Megan?" According to Lily, when Lily was a freshman of her high school, Megan had come to her school as an internship. Megan was in charge of Lily's class and taught lessons.
So, you were aiming to become a teacher? Why didn't you tell me? I'm a high school teacher too.
Apparently, Megan had not told Keith that she was aiming to become a high school teacher. Keith, grinning, looked at the pale-faced Megan. Lily tilted her head with a smile.
It's because it's a past she doesn't want to talk about, right, Teacher Megan? Doesn't want to talk about? What, did she make some mistake in class?
No.
She had an affair with a student's parent.
What Lily said was shocking. Megan had an affair with a student's parent she met during her student teaching, which became a problem and caused her teaching practice to be cut short. As a result, Megan eventually dropped out of college.
I heard a rumor that you got pregnant and that the father of the child is the parent from that time. How's your child?
Lily asked, but Megan didn't respond. Keith, his face frozen, asked Lily.
Hey, when did this education program happen?
3 years ago in June.
Megan came to the island and started seeing me in July 3 years ago. Wait, could it be?
Keith looked at Megan and the child beside her with a mix of shock and despair, and Megan burst into tears and collapsed.
I'm so sorry. You've got to be kidding me. I've been looking forward to this child's birth and supporting you wholeheartedly. So this child isn't mine.
Keith had met Megan, who worked at a bar, shortly after moving to the remote island. However, at that time, Megan was already pregnant with the child of Lily's classmate's parent. Unaware of this, Keith eagerly awaited the child's birth, watching Megan's belly grow bigger day by day. Imagining the scene was hilarious. Keith, thinking he was betraying his family, was actually the one being betrayed by his beloved mistress. There couldn't be anything more ironic than this.
You deceived me. How did you feel watching me care for a child that wasn't mine? You're truly the worst. Pay back all the money I lent you. Money you lent her? You lent her money? Yes. Megan borrowed a few $100s every month, saying her parents were sick.
While Keith was trembling with anger, Megan shook her head while crying.
Pay it back? That's impossible now. You said you loved me and I didn't have to pay it back. Love? That ended the moment I found out you were lying. This is why you can't trust women. Pretending someone else's child is mine is disgusting.
Ignoring his own actions, Keith shouted angrily, and I calmly told him.
You seem so confident, but don't think you're getting away with this.
Huh? What are you talking about?
You're acting all high and mighty. Stop playing the victim. You're the one at fault here. You're just as despicable. You and Megan are perfect for each other. What are you talking about? I'm the victim here.
What are you talking about?
The cheater can't be the victim. I've been thoroughly investigating all the things you've done.
To the furious Keith, I revealed that during the past year since he had sent me the divorce papers, I had been busy gathering evidence. I had duplicated the photos Keith left behind and hired a detective to investigate Keith and Megan's actions. I even called the bar, pretending to be a customer, to confirm when their relationship began.
I have all the evidence of your affair, and I'm gonna claim child support. Also, Keith, you might want to start looking for a new job. What? What do you mean? Actually, the current head of the county education board is my mentor from middle school. Even now, as an adult, he gives me life advice. He was wonderful, even helping with relationship advice back in the day. He takes everything seriously, so I can talk to him about anything, including my problems with you, Keith. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you realize how precarious your position is?
When I smiled sweetly, Keith's expression instantly turned to one of shock. In my life consultations with my mentor, I, of course, discussed Keith's affair. The fact that Keith was having an affair had been fully communicated to the education board through me. Teaching is considered a noble profession. Given his deep involvement in children's moral education, the fact that Keith was having an affair put his position on the edge. Especially, my mentor was well known for being strict about such matters. Keith couldn't possibly be unaware of that.
How could you do this?
Keith, looking like he was about to yell in anger, swallowed his words. His expression twisted in frustration. He knelt down, trembling.
Please! If I lose my job, support me until I find another one. Like I said, I have no money because I've been lending it to Megan.
Why should I support someone who's practically a stranger to me?
Don't say that. I waited a year for the divorce for Lily's sake, didn't I? Can't you wait to claim child support until I find a new job? It's the least you could do.
No, it's impossible. There's nothing to wait for because it's already over. We are already divorced, so we're strangers now. In fact, I'm the one claiming child support from you, so I'm the one who's supposed to receive the money. Keith staggered and collapsed down on the knee with a look of utter despair, hanging his head in defeat. Beside him, Megan was quietly sobbing. The scene was so pitiful that I couldn't help but laugh. Well, make sure to pay the child support. After that, my efforts to gather evidence and prepare for child support claims paid off. My claims were fully recognized in the divorce, and I was able to get child support from Keith. Keith's affair, deemed unfit for an educator, was treated as a serious issue by the education board. As a result, Keith was given a 3-month salary reduction. About Dad's punishment, I thought he might get fired. It's hard to believe that someone having an affair is responsible for educating children, isn't it? Don't worry, his punishment is far from over. Lily looked puzzled by my words, but just as I had predicted, Keith continued to face repercussions. You can't stop people from talking. The fact that Keith was having an affair quickly spread among the students and parents. When Keith walked down the hallway, the teenage girls would look at him as if he were something filthy and avoid him, while the boys would mock him. A teacher like that couldn't do his job properly, and even his colleagues began to look at him with disdain. Unable to bear it any longer, Keith chose to resign from his teaching position. After that, struggling to find work, he started working at a construction site, a place meant for skilled laborers. Without proper knowledge or experience in manual labor, he worked miserably while being yelled at by others. Megan, Keith's mistress, took her child and left, seemingly to escape from him. She probably did this to avoid Keith demanding repayment of the money he had lent her. I didn't know what had happened to her until recently, but in this age of social media, I stumbled upon what seemed to be her account. It seemed to be a secret account, where she posted all sorts of terrible things. I had an affair with an older guy, but honestly, there was no benefit besides the money. He smelled old, was clingy, and just plain gross. Keeping a sugar daddy for money while dating a hottie is definitely the best strategy. Megan, saying whatever she liked, still seemed to be chasing after men to use for money. From my perspective, women like her honestly seem to have an incurable condition. As for me, I spend my days working part-time. The child support I received from Keith, combined with my part-time earnings, allowed me to pay for Lily's college tuition. Lily, who started living on her own when she entered college, also works part-time to cover her living expenses. I feel sorry for making her go through this, but she seems to be enjoying her college life with friends she gets along with. Once she becomes fully independent, I'll be starting a new chapter in my own life. While it's a bit sad to see her become independent, it's also something to celebrate. To make sure she doesn't worry about me, I need to make my own life fulfilling. In preparation for that time, I'm currently exploring new hobbies. Then, Kevin, with an innocent look on his face, said something horrifying.
Well, your mother-in-law is gonna pass away soon, right? We're getting the inheritance, so why do we need to work?
At those words, I was beyond angry, I was simply flabbergasted. And then, Kevin continued speaking.
I visited her the other day to get some pocket money. She looked really bad. I think she doesn't have much time left. Can't wait for the inheritance. I'm so excited.
Saying that, he began fiddling with his smartphone with a grin that suggested he might start humming a tune. To put it mildly, I thought he was a devil disguised as an angel. Kevin had turned greedy and sold the violin my mother cherished. I was already disappointed in Kevin, but now I felt utterly devastated. If you want to be spoiled by a woman, go ahead. If there's someone who would indulge you, then leech off them for as long as you want. But I won't ever indulge you again. You, who can only repay kindness with spite, should get a glimpse of hell. I will never forgive you. I am Catherine Thompson, a 37-year-old housewife. Last year, I married Kevin and we lived together without any children. I met Kevin at work. Once, Kevin joined the company I worked for as a temporary staff member. His elusive attitude, making it unclear if he had any motivation or not, seemed to frustrate the trainers of the new employee orientation. Eventually, the trainers handed him off to me for guidance. When I asked him why he wasn't taking the training seriously, Kevin said,
"Well, the trainers were men. And old ones at that. If someone like you was in charge from the start, I would have worked harder."
And with that, he gave me a mischievous smile. Somehow, Kevin's smile made my heart waver a bit. Even though he was approaching his 30s, Kevin had this charm that evoked a protective or maternal instinct. Back then, not just me, but most senior female bosses adored him. Because I was always guiding Kevin, seeing him get along with other female bosses made me feel a tinge of jealousy. Reading my feelings, Kevin once said,
"I only want to be taught by you, Catherine,"
and gave me that carefree smile of his. That's when I started to understand why some women get hooked on those charming ladies' man. Around that time, my mother, Alice, fell ill. She always had chronic health issues, but recently she got so bad she couldn't get up. She decided not to be hospitalized and received care at home. Kevin and I worked for one of the companies managed by my mother. If something were to happen to my mother, I'd have a mountain of things to consider, including the management of the family business and financial matters. I decided to take a leave of absence from work, especially with the wish of caring for my mother. Just when I thought I wouldn't see Kevin anymore, he asked me out. He said,
"Catherine, I want to be with you from now on."
And so, we started dating. After dating for some time and considering marriage, I introduced Kevin to my mother. At that time, my mom, who had been looking pale due to her illness, seemed to brighten up and feel better as she talked with Kevin. I thought to myself, that's Kevin, always charming older women. Still, I was happy to see my mother and Kevin get along so well. Later on, Kevin agreed to my strong wish to keep my family's surname, Thompson. So we decided to tie the knot. Kevin has always had a knack for being pampered. Even when we were dating, I paid for all our dates. That hasn't changed since we got married. Even a year into our marriage, Kevin never reaches for his wallet. Every time the bill comes, he always steps back a bit and looks at me with those puppy dog eyes. And with those eyes, he seems to silently plead,
"Could you please pay?"
Seeing him like that, I can't help but feel, oh well. And I always end up paying. Admittedly, I earn more than Kevin, who's currently a temp worker. Even after our monthly expenses, thanks to my savings, we live comfortably. When I asked Kevin if it hurt his pride as a man that I always paid, he replied nonchalantly, "What pride? It's common these days for women to be the breadwinners, ain't it?" Even as a temp worker, if Kevin put in a bit more effort, he could secure a full-time position. Up until I took my leave, I felt like I'd given him enough guidance. Not only about work, but also about business etiquette and the mindset needed for his job. I also wanted Kevin to understand the responsibilities that came with marriage. However, against all my expectations, Kevin quit his job all too easily. When I pressed him for a reason, Kevin, with a seemingly innocent face, asserted a shocking statement.
Why work? Your mom's gonna pass away soon, right? We'll inherit her assets, so why bother?
I was flabbergasted and couldn't even muster anger at his words. Then Kevin continued.
You know, I went to see her the other day to get some allowance, but she looked pretty bad. I think she won't last much longer. Can't wait for the inheritance. It's gonna be exciting.
Saying that, he began fiddling with his smartphone, a smirk on his face as if he might start humming any second. That was the moment I realized that Kevin, to put it mildly, was a devil in an angel's disguise. I was at my mother's house again today. By the afternoon, my sister Mary had returned to our mother's house. Mary had married young, and her kids are already in college, living on their own out of state. Her husband, Bob, is on a business assignment abroad, so Mary has been staying at our mother's house lately. I take care of our mother mornings while Mary is at work. Speaking of which, Kevin came by the other day. He said he was here to pay a visit, but he just sweet-talked Mom into giving him some money and left. Isn't he working yet? Again? I thought, feeling deflated. It seems Kevin has been visiting my mother several times when I'm not around. And getting money from my mother has become a pattern. Before we got married, when I brought Kevin to meet my mom, he seemed to accidentally notice that she had a vast fortune. That's probably why he quit his job, banking on the inheritance, and keeps coming for handouts. What a leech. Indeed, the mansion where my mother lives is on the most elevated piece of land around here, and the entrance is quite impressive. This house was built by our late father, who was also quite wealthy. When he passed away, my mother took over all of his businesses and expanded the wealth even further. Now, just from her businesses alone, she has assets worth $13 million. Kevin was staring intently at that violin in Mom's room. There's a violin showcased in my mother's room. It seems to be a keepsake from our father, who once aspired to be a musician. No matter how wealthy she became, our mother often said there's nothing more precious than that violin. It was so Kevin to have the sharp instincts to notice the value of that violin. Mary, next time Kevin comes over, you don't have to give him any money. But Mom keeps giving it to him. It's really frustrating. I felt defeated again. Though I've only been married to Kevin for just over a year, I need to consider our future together. Seeing me downcast, Mary reached out. There are men who live off women with money, you know. Kevin probably lived like that too. Don't worry, if you decide to divorce, I'm on Catherine's side. Mary's words were a great comfort. Perhaps Kevin will change in the future. Divorce was always an option, so I decided I would think about it if and when necessary. One day, my mother's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. After eating a little breakfast, she went to sleep but suddenly began to struggle. Luckily, both my sister and I were at Mom's house that morning, so we noticed right away. Mom fell into a coma. The doctor who arrived told us to prepare for the worst, and both Mary and I struggled to keep our composure. Somehow, Mom held on till the next day. During that time, Mary's kids and Bob, who came from abroad, visited. Yet, despite having taken so much allowance from her, Kevin was nowhere to be seen. It might be the last chance to see my mother. Late that night, surrounded by her family, my mother passed away. I believe her last moments were peaceful. Bob and the kids were crying with sorrow. I was heartbroken too. Since the doctor had told us to be prepared, Mary and I could swiftly move on to the next steps. Planning the funeral, notifying various people. Thanks to our prior preparations, things proceeded relatively smoothly. I sent Kevin a message, telling him about Mom's passing and the details of the funeral. It was obvious from the checkmark on the message that he read it, but he didn't reply. Perhaps he's in shock, I thought, and waited for him to show up at the funeral. At the funeral, Mary and I greeted the people who had close friendships with Mom during her lifetime. Executives from her company, longtime friends, so many gathered for her. Knowing how much she was loved by everyone, my heart swelled with emotions. Then, Bob approached us, looking very distressed.
I went to bring the violin Mom cherished to place it at the venue, but it's gone,"
he exclaimed. I couldn't help but exclaim.
"What?"
We had been so busy from the time Mom passed until the funeral and had left Mom's house unattended. Could it have been robbed during that time? Mary looked surprised too. I remembered what Mary had told me the other day. She said that Kevin was watching the violin intently. I quickly called Kevin, who hadn't yet appeared at the funeral. To my surprise, he answered after only 2 rings. "Hey Kevin, what are you up to? Aren't you coming to the funeral? Where are you?" Maybe because I was firing questions at him, Kevin laughed over the phone.
"You're bombarding me with questions, that's kinda funny. Your mother passed away, right? It took longer than I thought. I've been waiting and I'm kinda tired."
I wanted to yell at Kevin for his insensitive remark, but I held back, urging him to come to the funeral right away. Then Kevin made another shocking statement.
"I'm kinda in the middle of something right now. You know the violin in your mom's room? The one called a Barius or something? There's a collector who wants to buy that old thing, and I'm in the middle of selling it."
I couldn't believe my ears. Kevin was selling my mother's violin.
"Kevin, stop that process right now. Do you want trouble?"
I desperately tried to stop him. That violin is something that should never be sold.
"No can do. The buyer is really eager, and they've got the cash ready. Well, gotta go. Good luck with the funeral. See ya."
With that, Kevin hung up the phone. I couldn't share this about Kevin with everyone at the funeral. I decided to discuss it with Mary and Bob later on. Driven by greed, Kevin had sold the violin my mother cherished. I was already disappointed in Kevin, but now I felt utterly devastated. If you want to lean on a woman, go ahead. If you have someone who'll let you, then keep doing it and live off them. But I'm never gonna pamper you again. You, who can only repay kindness with malice, should go through hell. I will never forgive you," I screamed in my heart. After the viewing and the burial, Mary, Bob, and I took a brief rest at my mother's house. Just because the funeral was over, didn't mean everything was settled. My mother had a broad range of businesses, so there were a lot of things to sort out. But before that, I had to settle things with it. It's about Kevin. In the end, Kevin didn't show up for the entire funeral, including the viewing or even the burial. Considering how much he had leaned on my mother, I've totally given up on him because he didn't even say a last goodbye. What finally made me so was that Kevin had sold that violin. I hadn't yet told Mary and Bob about it.
Anyway, I wonder where Mom's violin ended up. Depending on the situation, we might need to consult with the police.
Mary, unaware of everything, looked concerned, resting her chin on her hand. "Well, we might have to get the police involved. Catherine, I called someone who knows about the violin, so it'd be good to hear from them directly." "Oh, look, here they come." As I said that, a loud engine noise could be heard from a distance. The sound of the engine stopped right in front of our house. Soon after, the sound of a car door slamming shut was heard. And just as I thought that, without even ringing the doorbell, Kevin burst into the house.
"Hey, Catherine, sorry I missed the funeral. Did a lot of sympathy money come in?"
Is he really, being as insensitive as this extent, a human? Mary and Bob clearly looked displeased.
"Kevin, why didn't you show up at the viewing or the burial? After all the things Mom did for you, aren't you sad about her passing?"
I tried to keep my anger in check as I confronted Kevin a bit. Kevin replied sarcastically, "Well, I'm sad, you know? I won't get any more allowance, right? When I use Mom's money for the slot machines, I win quite often. Guess folks who are good with money have luck as well." And without waiting for me to bring it up, he started talking about the violin himself. "Turns out, you can't get an inheritance right away. I couldn't wait for all the legal procedures, so I asked an acquaintance to sell the violin at Mom's room." At Kevin's words, Mary's eyes widened in shock.
"What? You sold it? That violin?"
Bob, sitting next to her, looked just as stunned.
Yeah, and I sold it for $170,000, so I went ahead and bought a car.
Hearing this, Mary burst out laughing, her face turning bright red. A moment later, Bob also broke into loud laughter. Only Kevin looked baffled.
Did you really sell it for $170,000?
Mary couldn't stop her laughter. Kevin looked at me with a scowl, as if saying,
"What do you mean?"
All I could say was, "I'm sorry for your loss." Now, Kevin's face turned beet red with anger. It was a rare expression for Kevin, who normally never got angry. I began to feel amused.
"Was that loud car just pulled up yours?"
I teased Kevin, asking him. Kevin, trying to keep a straight face, began to brag about his car, which he claimed to have bought for $170,000.
"Oh yeah. You know this house is right on top of a steep hill, right? It used to be tough getting up here, but that car has some serious horsepower. So, hills like this are no issue at all."
Kevin sounded so smug, it was comical. Watching him, Mary, who had been laughing her head off, chimed in.
"Kevin, you made a mistake. You shouldn't have sold that violin. It might even be illegal. That violin is a replica."
Kevin looked bewildered for a moment.
"Even if it's a replica, it's crafted so well that an amateur might not tell the difference."
Mary continued. "However, for someone who loves violins enough to collect them, they'd spot the difference in an instant."
"My dad wanted to be a musician when he was young. But, of course, he didn't have much money back then. He couldn't afford a real violin he always admired. One day, he got a replica that looked just like the real thing. Still, my dad cherished that violin. He even played it when he proposed to my mom. She was so happy with it, even after my dad passed away, she took good care of that violin."
Listening to Mary, Kevin's expression grew tense. I wondered how and to whom he had sold it. He probably chose a shady dealer.
"I had a certificate with it. When I said it was owned by a wealthy person and came with a certificate, someone wanted to buy it immediately."
Both Mary and I sighed. His thinking was just too naive.
"Kevin, you should have checked it carefully. That wasn't a certificate. It was a love letter from my dad to my mom, mimicking a certificate. He probably gave it to Mom when he proposed her. I wonder how the buyer will react when they see it. It's gonna be interesting,"
I said. Kevin's face turned pale. Honestly, I couldn't feel sorry for Kevin at all. Even if it was a replica, he had no right to sell Mom's cherished possession. I was not about to let him off the hook. At that moment, Kevin's cell phone rang. With a pale face, Kevin answered the call.
"Hello?"
As he said it, I could hear the furious shouting from the other end of the line.
"Hey, Kevin, what did you do?" "The buyers lodged a complaint. They said it was clearly a fake, they could tell at a glance. They're demanding $170,000 back now. They said they're gonna report you to the police if you don't pay."
Just as I had thought. The person on the phone was probably the broker who had facilitated the sale. It's questionable that the broker didn't verify the item properly, and the buyer, for wanting to buy such a rare item for immediate cash without proper verification, is equally to blame. In any case, it doesn't seem like a legitimate transaction. Anybody who have a good judge can tell a knockoff from the real deal in a heartbeat. Even though it was my mom's treasured item, there's no way it's worth $170,000. Given that the certificate of authenticity is clearly a joke, the excuse of not knowing it's a fake might not fly. Kevin was desperately trying to reason with the broker, but it looked like his only options were to refund the money or face the police. Just after buying a new car, Kevin ended up having to part with it. He hung up, looking utterly defeated. Watching him, Mary and her husband were smirking as if to say,
"I told you so."
As for me, as long as my mother's precious violin returns, I'm good. About that violin though. Doing wrong is still wrong. More misfortune awaited Kevin. Bob, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke up.
"By the way, Kevin, if you're planning to sell your car, where is it? Didn't you drive here?"
At Bob's words, I too peeked out the window at the front door. Indeed, Kevin should have arrived by car, but Kevin's car wasn't where it was supposed to be parked in front of the entrance.
That can't be, I locked it. Oh, no!
Realizing something, Kevin rushed outside barefooted, only to find his car had rolled down the street and crashed into the fence of a large house down the hill. Geez, did he forget to set the handbrake or something? I sighed, watching Kevin race towards his wrecked car. Unfortunately, the car hit from the hood and the front of the car was smashed in. It might be tough to sell. It seems it's going to cost a fortune to get it fixed. That house the car hit, isn't that the old mob boss's place that's been there for years? Tough break, Kevin. I silently muttered sorry for your loss to myself again. Not long after Kevin headed to the scene of his wrecked car, we went over to Mr. Mob Boss's place to apologize. After all, we were family, so we sincerely apologized for what Kevin did. Interestingly enough, the boss has been a neighbor for a long time and seemed to be good friends with my mother. He even attended my mother's funeral. The gentlemanly boss, in turn, expressed his condolences for our mother's passing and seemed to notice that my husband, son-in-law, was not at the funeral. This time, he stated that because it was solely Kevin's recklessness, he was the only one to be held responsible. As we were leaving, I glanced at the wall the car hit. It was heartbreaking to see the fine brick wall damaged. The moment we all got back to Mom's house, Kevin started talking about the inheritance again. Hey Catherine, when am I gonna get my share of the inheritance? Man, if it wasn't for Mom's inheritance, it would have been over. Kevin seemed oddly relieved. Seeing his misunderstanding, I felt the need to set him straight. What are you talking about? You're not inheriting a single cent. Kevin's face was a clear picture of confusion. I informed him that, being just a son-in-law and not having been legally adopted, he had no right to an inheritance.
Why not? I was really looking forward to getting that inheritance.
He's truly an insensitive and tactless man. Well, Catherine will inherit, so there's something in it for me. I felt tears coming by seeing Kevin, who seemed to only think about money. I pulled out a few photographs from my bag and laid them on the table. Seeing them, Kevin went pale again. Looking back, I really regret ever marrying you. I didn't mind your clingy side, but marriage is a serious commitment, with legal implications, way more than you think. Then, the doorbell rang. It was the police. Ah, that's me who made a call. Didn't someone steal Mom's violin? So, while you all were talking earlier, I contacted the police. Under Mary's guidance, the police tried to detain Kevin. Kevin, crying, resisted.
Hey, why? You should overlook theft among family members, shouldn't you?
His loud admission of the theft was so naive, it almost made him seem adorable. From an outsider's perspective, at least. Although he called it family, it wasn't the case he lived with. Even if I inherited it as an inheritance, it's still considered personal property, so it can't escape being theft. I watched Kevin's back as he was put into the police car and whispered, "Goodbye." Mom, I'm sorry for causing so much worry this time. If you have something to say, feel free to visit me in my dreams. Saying that, I thought of my mother and prayed in my heart. In the end, various charges were imposed on Kevin, and it seems he's facing fines and compensations. He has admitted to the theft of the violin. He's being sued for fraud over that violin, but since Kevin didn't know it was a replica, the outcome is uncertain. Additionally, there are costs for repairing the fence at the gang leader's house and miscellaneous payouts for me. Apparently, some of the women Kevin was unfaithful with lent him a lot of money. When it was discovered that he was married, he was asked to return the money he had borrowed along with the breakup. Kevin has fallen into a whirlwind of debt, and right now, we're undergoing divorce mediation through our lawyers. Kevin brought up property division, but since I've been on leave since our marriage, we haven't really built any joint assets. I told him as much. Above the fireplace in the living room, photos of my mom and dad were placed side by side. I stared at them, thinking, I hope you two have met again on the other side. Next to the photos, my father's heirloom violin was displayed. We really wanted the violin returned, so we explained the situation to the buyer and got it back. The $170,000 were funds we squeezed out of my mother's inheritance. More than anything, getting the violin back was the top priority. Kevin plans to pay back the $170,000 in full. Catherine, make sure you don't fall for another moocher next time. Mary looked a little lonely since Bob had gone back abroad. Since I'm now single, I'm thinking of staying at my mother's house for a while. Again, it seems the women Kevin cheated with were ones he had previously mooched off of. The detective I hired to investigate Kevin told me. Kevin has gotten a little money from a lawyer and wanted to show these women his manly side, which is none of my business any longer. It seems he joined my company without any real intention of working, likely looking for another easy mark. And I turned out to be his target. Mary pointed it out to me, and I deeply reflected on my past actions. I learned from a private investigator that Kevin had been estranged from his parents a long time ago. Apparently, they were utterly disappointed with Kevin for not working and relying on women to support him. I can relate to their feelings more than ever now. The fact that Kevin, as an adult, couldn't live without leeching off women makes me pity him. Maybe when he was younger, there were women willing to support him. However, living like that for the rest of his life seems nearly impossible. I hope this incident makes Kevin reflect on his actions and realize the value of working and earning money. I've returned to work after my leave. The company my mother left behind is going to be taken over by Bob, and he'll be returning from abroad soon. That's why Mary's been cheerful recently, and I've been enjoying the hearty breakfasts made by her. When I was getting ready to head to work and about to put on my shoes. Oh, almost forgot. I took off my half-putted-on shoes and went to the living room to say my morning prayer. Then I talked to my parents as usual. Off I go, Mom and Dad. Hope today's gonna be a good day. With that, I opened the front door and stepped out. I can't go on living. The voice muttered so softly that I almost missed it. Come home. I tried to sound as cheerful and upbeat as possible, but my voice quivered. A quiet silence ensued. Is it okay? With a hesitant voice, I couldn't help but shed a tear. This is your home too, you know. After that, there were no words, we just cried together. My son, looking somewhat embarrassed as he opened the front door, seemed to have put on more weight than when we last lived together. No, that's not right. Upon closer look, he was swollen. His father and mother-in-law had been siphoning off his salary, and he had been surviving on instant noodles for all 3 meals. It's impossible for anyone to maintain physical and mental health in such a situation. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath to contain my anger. I've been put through a lot by my husband and mother-in-law, but this was the first time I felt this enraged. A mother's role is to protect her son. Just 2 more months. With determination, I opened my eyes and said to my son, Can you hang in there for just 2 more months? By then, those 2 will be going down to hell. No, they'll probably send themselves there. My name is Mary, 50 years old. I work in accounting at a company and live alone in an old 2-bedroom apartment in New York. Although I live alone now, I have a husband and a child. Up to a year and a half ago, our family of 4 lived in this cramped apartment. My husband, Tom, who's 2 years my senior, is a corporate employee and holds the position of sales director. He had his issues before we got married, but after tying the knot, he became the very definition of a workaholic. However, he dumped all the household responsibilities on me, even though I also worked full-time. I was the one who attended all our son John's school events, taking off from work when necessary. Our son John is turning 24 this year. Ever since he was a little boy, he was quite the rascal, often coming home with his clothes covered in mud. Even when I'd come home exhausted from work, his clothes and body would be gritty. When I'd brush my hand over his head, sand would fall out. Get in the shower right now. If there's one good thing about this rundown apartment, it's that it has a proper bathroom. Even when I scolded him, John would just laugh and say with an innocent smile,
"Let's eat dinner first, Mom."
mischievous yet so endearing. Seeing my son smile, it felt like all the exhaustion from work just melted away. Then there's my other family member, my mother-in-law, Linda. She was the root cause of why I ended up living alone like this. She retired and started living with us when John was 6 years old. Tom, having grown up just with his mother, was somewhat of a mama's boy. When Linda called saying she wanted to move in, Tom didn't consult with me and just said, "Sure," without a second thought. "Why did you agree without discussing it with me?" Seeing my frowned face, Tom showed an angry expression.
"Why are you against living with my mom? What's your reason? She raised me on her own, working hard as a single mother,"
he argued passionately. "But our apartment is small, and John's at that mischievous age. I wonder if Linda wouldn't get tired of it all," I said hesitantly, trying to argue my point. I always loved how devoted Tom was to his mom, but realistically, living with 4 people in this tiny apartment seemed impossible.
"Is that all?"
Tom laughed.
"My mom doesn't care about small spaces. The apartment we used to live in was old and run down. She worked hard so we could move to a better place. We're working hard to buy a condo, she'll understand. She's retired, she'll probably help out around the house."
Tom continued.
"Mary, you're working too. It'll probably make things easier."
Hearing that, I felt a bit relieved, thinking, he's considered my feelings too. But then Linda, entering the room with her bags, said, "Oh my, what a small and messy place. I told you, right? We're working hard to buy a nice, new condo." Tom explained, his face reddening as he tried to make light of the situation. "Well, it's been how long since you two got married? 7 years? 8 years? And you still haven't saved enough?" She looked at me disapprovingly. "Mary, you're working, right? I raised this boy on just my salary." Then she had an idea. "Maybe you should cover the living expenses with just your salary, Mary. That way, all of Tom's earnings can go towards the condo."
I can't do that,"
I began, but Tom grabbed my shoulder.
"Brilliant idea, Mom. You did raise me on a single income."
I thought he must be out of his mind. Linda had raised just 1 child. And she probably had some support being a single mother. Now they're asking me to cover the expenses for 4 people on just my salary. But to prevent being ridiculed further by Linda, Tom desperately tried to convince me.
"With this plan, that luxury condo isn't just a dream anymore. Thanks to Mom, she'll take care of John, and we can push forward."
"That's right. You two will work hard. I'm here, and I'll take care of John," Linda said, patting John's head. I sighed softly. Reluctantly, I agreed. If Linda would take care of John and help around the house, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But then, my back hurts. I guess I'm getting old. Recently, I've been feeling dizzy. I worked and did housework and childcare. Maybe it's time for me to relax a bit. Turns out, she kept making excuses and didn't do any housework. Tom said, "She's not feeling well, can't help it," and asked me to do more chores.
"At least help out, Tom. I'm the sole breadwinner for our family of 4, and I gotta do overtime. If you're gonna say that, I'm also working hard to buy a luxury condo. You have no idea how tiring sales can be."
Tom snapped back. The goal had shifted from a new condo to a luxury new condo. I was so frustrated. Thinking this was Linda's influence. Looking back, I felt I did my best. Once John started school, Linda would often go out with her new friends. They got along well, going to luncheons and spa trips. She not only used her pension but also asked Tom for money. "Are you feeling better?" I'd ask. She'd retort, "I'm going to the spa because I'm not."
"She bullies me,"
Linda would complain to Tom, who'd scold me.
"You're such a mean wife."
From then on, They'd blame me for everything: not doing house chores, late meals, bad food. When I scolded John for misbehaving, Linda would defend him.
"Don't bother listening to that clueless person,"
she said. "This is for education." She ignored my protest.
"Your grandma got you some candies over there."
With that, she pampered John. Well, he's just a kid. Naturally, he'd be more attached to a grandma who always spoils him than a nagging mother like me. Gradually, he stopped listening to me, and Linda even took him away from me. John started working after graduating from college last year. And then, out of the blue, he announced, "We bought a brand new luxury condo, so we're gonna move."
"We?"
I found the way he phrased it odd. I had suspected for several days that the three of them were up to something. "Yeah. Oh, and we'll leave the furniture and appliances for you to use. We'll buy new ones." I couldn't help but wonder why I had put up with this for so long. Still, the idea of finally being free from these two overwhelmed me. People must wonder why I never divorced. Of course, I had brought up divorce before. But Tom, always concerned about what others think, never agreed. "That's one reason." "And the second reason?" he said. "If we divorce, you'll never see John again." No matter how much they despised me, or looked down on me with mocking eyes, John was my son. The thought of never seeing him again was unbearable. I wanted to witness his growth. But now, he's an adult. He can earn his own money and make decisions for himself. I believed he would do just fine. Take care. I waved goodbye to the three of them with a smile. A year and a half later, I received a letter. "Let's divorce." That's all it said, along with the business card of the lawyer. Tom, now holding a position as a department head, surely cares about public opinion. Even so, to send such a letter. After all this time refusing to divorce, I was flabbergasted by his audacity. Did he finally cross a line? I pondered as I opened my apartment door. Suddenly, my cell rang. The screen showed John's name. I answered immediately. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. I repeated, "Hello? John?" After a moment, I heard quiet sobbing.
"Mom, help me.
"What?"
I can't take it anymore."
On the other side of the phone, my son John, who should have been a proud adult, was crying. His stifled sobs were audible, interspersed with him trying to swallow his tears. His choked-up voice resonated through the receiver.
"Something happened? How about your dad and grandma?"
"They're out having dinner together."
"Dinner? Just the two of them? What about you? Did you already eat?"
"I'm eating now. Instant noodles."
"Oh.
I couldn't understand the meaning. Neither the reason for the call nor why he was crying.
John, what's going on? Can you explain slowly?"
I finally grasped the situation after listening to John's hesitant explanation. In their new place, a luxury condo, those jerks were enjoying themselves, and they were forcing John to endure the same treatment they had done to me. No, it was even worse. I could at least cook meals within my means. Of course, not luxurious meals with premium ingredients. But I managed to prepare enough for 4 people using discounted or inexpensive ingredients.
"When I got a job, Grandma said we should open a bank account for my paycheck. So, we did it together. She said I'd need to pitch in for the household expenses. I thought, well, it's Grandma. I even entrusted her with my ATM card. It was fine at first. I even received an allowance. But then, gradually, my allowance kept decreasing. Meals that used to be ready-made and laid out on the table disappeared. For a while now, I've not been receiving any allowance and have been eating instant noodles for all 3 meals."
John chuckled weakly.
"I even bring instant noodles to work every single day. My colleagues tease me about it. I just laugh it off saying, I love instant noodles, you know. Living in such a luxury condo, and yet..."
John continued with a self-deprecating laugh.
I can't go on anymore.
His voice was so soft, I almost missed it. Excuse me? I was about to ask, but I didn't. I couldn't just say.
What are you talking about?
Instead of blaming or scolding my son, I said as a mother. Come back home. I tried to sound as cheerful and upbeat as possible, but my voice trembled. A heavy silence followed. Is it okay? I couldn't hold back the tears hearing his hesitant voice.
What are you talking about?
This time, I said it.
This is your home too.
After that, there were no words. We just cried together. The next day, my son, looking somewhat embarrassed as he opened the front door, seemed to have put on more weight than when we last lived together. No, that's not right. After staring at him for a while, I realized he was swollen, not fat. Being exploited for his paycheck by his husband and mother-in-law, he only ate instant noodles for all 3 meals. There's no way he could maintain a healthy body and mind with that.
Are you okay?
Well, not really. I've got a headache, and I'm feeling dizzy.
He added with a troubled smile.
Lately, I've been running out of breath easily too.
I closed my eyes and took a deep breath to suppress my anger. I've been through a lot with my husband and mother-in-law, but this was the first time I felt this angry. A mother's duty is to protect her child.
Just 2 more months.
I opened my eyes determinedly and said to my son, Can you bear with it for just 2 more months? If he did, we could send those 2 to hell. Or better yet, they'll dig their own grave. The first thing I did was contact a divorce lawyer. Then, I had John write his resignation letter. Okay? Eat instant noodles at home as you've been doing, but try to eat something nutritious at work. Saying that, I handed him some money. Don't let those 2 find out you have this money, okay? I had an appointment to meet Tom. We agreed to meet at a cafe after work. It's been a while. Looking at Tom, who had taken the seat across from me, I thought, I knew it. He looked every bit the man living in a luxury condo, dressed in a high-end suit. Still, he's as vain as ever, always worrying about what others think. Such a shallow man. How's John doing? When I asked, he responded with, Of course he's doing well. He's got his own room now and is living comfortably. I just wish he'd marry soon so we can live together. I'd be happy to see my grandkids. You? Happy to have grandkids? Weren't you indifferent to parenting? I laughed sarcastically. What's with the attitude? I don't want to fight when we're seeing each other after so long. How's your mom? Cutting him off, I quickly asked. Oh, she's doing well too. Said she was going out with a friend for an overnight trip. Oh, really? As I expected, they both seemed to be living their usual carefree lives. Honestly, like mother, like son. This man, who's likely pleased about our divorce, doesn't realize the situation he's in. He should be asking to live with me again, but remains oblivious. By the way, about that apartment. I'm thinking of giving it up. I need your signature for it. Sure, I have no attachment to that old, rundown place. All right. I'll handle the paperwork. I'll mail you the documents, so please sign and send them back. Okay, got it. Well, I should get going. Standing up with the check in hand, as a final gesture of goodwill. I didn't get a thank you. Tom just looked up at me. You're leaving just like that? We might not see each other again. Yes, I have to go home and cook my own dinner. You should treat yourself to eating out once in a while. Looking down coldly at Tom as he sipped his coffee, I remarked. I can't shake off my frugal habits. Turning my back on the man who laughed mockingly, I suddenly remembered. Oh, right. And turned back to him. I was invited by an acquaintance to play some slot machines recently. I actually won a few $100s. Surprisingly, slots are kinda easy. This comment got the most reaction since we met today. Right? They're addictive, aren't they? If you want, I'll go with you next time. You're joking, right? I sharply retorted.
Go into the slots with my ex-husband who I divorced? Not in a million years.
With that, I turned my back and started walking away. Now, the seed has been planted. Whether that seed withers or grows into a massive tree, it's up to you, Tom. 2 months later, I approached John, who was holding a bouquet of flowers.
Finished with your last shift?
Yeah. They even threw me a farewell party. Made me realize it was a pretty decent job.
Maybe you wanted to stay longer?
No, it's okay. I got an offer from another company last week, so I'm gonna start fresh next week. John had been discreetly moving his essential belongings, trying not to alert Tom and Linda. All he had was a single bag. It was just the right amount to leave his painful past behind. John left home this morning as usual. He applied for a new bank account for his paycheck and severance pay. The reason he never changed his bank account before was because he believed that the greedy Tom and Linda would never allow it. If they kicked him out, he thought he would be penniless and homeless. Living in such a toxic environment probably clouded his judgment. Even if he had come to my apartment, he'd likely be found and dragged back. So, I asked him to keep living his life until he could move to a new place. Shall we go now? I finished moving during the day. I handed the keys to the new place to John.
Amazing, Mom. Buying a condo in just 2 months?
It's a used one, and it's not that big with just 2 bedrooms and a living room. And we'll have to pay for it for a while. Still, it's money I saved up over the past year and a half, almost entirely for myself. I initially thought it might be for John's wedding, but using it as a down payment for the condo isn't bad.
I'll help with the payments. You made me a co-owner of the condo after all.
Let's not push ourselves too hard.
Yeah, we'll be okay if we're together.
Our new life together began that day. A few months after I started living with John. The doorbell, ringing persistently just after I returned from work. Was Tom and Linda on the intercom screen. With an angry face, Linda shouted,
"Mary, open up!"
The aggressive knocking would have disturbed the neighbors, so I opened the door. Please stop.
Aren't you bothering the neighbors? Shut it. Isn't John here? If he's here, bring him out. He's here, isn't he?
Just come in.
You're causing a scene for the neighbors.
Sitting on the living room couch, Tom and Linda desperately tried to persuade John, who sat opposite them. John, your home is that condo over there, right?
Want to go home with Grandma?
When John didn't respond, they accused me.
You lured him away, didn't you?
More importantly, how do you know this address?
I never told you about my new condo. I staked out your office and followed you here. Figured you took John based on when you moved. Give John back! Damn kidnapper!
John snapped at those words.
I chose to come here on my own. She's been protecting me. I'm an adult, I should be able to decide where I go.
At John's words, Linda's tone instantly softened, almost cooing.
We were just worried. When we called your office, they said you quit. You changed your cell number and we couldn't reach you.
That's right. Even if you're an adult, you're still my kid. Did you think we wouldn't worry when you suddenly disappeared? John let out a bitter laugh.
You were probably just worried about the money, since it stopped coming in. What are you talking about? I've got way more money. I bought you that fancy condo, not some second-hand place.
I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all.
What's so funny?
After having my laugh, I looked at them both squarely. To begin with, your plan was flawed. Just because one income increases, you thought you could ditch the other. Just how long do you think I've been working at my company, and how many raises do you think I've had? Proud Tom shot back at my mocking tone.
But with just one person, expenses are less. Even considering the condo fees, it's not as expensive as that old apartment's rent.
If you'd lived a normal life, 2 salaries and 1 pension would have sufficed. But wearing flashy suits, going out every night, how did you think you could sustain such a ridiculous lifestyle? The two fell silent. Though Linda looked bitter, I didn't let up. By the way, Tom, is your new girlfriend candidate pretty? Much younger than you? Or both?
What?
Tom's face paled.
What are you getting at?
With how much you resisted divorce because of what people might think, your new partner must be someone to be envied. I thought she might be rich, but considering how desperately you're chasing John, that seems unlikely. This was news to Linda, who was wide-eyed.
You're not telling me you've been lavishing money on that woman. No wonder you stopped giving us money. So that's it. Enough! That's why I never introduced her. How long do you plan on leeching off your kid?
John's exasperated look said it all. We stood up simultaneously. Can you continue this discussion in your luxury condo?
If you linger any longer in our home, we're gonna call the cops.
They glared at us, spewing curses as they left. The reason Tom had been so desperate? He'd been showering a young woman with money, and she mistakenly believed he was wealthy. Decked out in high-end suits and buying her anything, it's no wonder she thought so. Eventually, Tom, not able to win John back, fell into his old vices. Slots, horse racing, and various other gambles. As a result, he went bankrupt. Selling the condo might have been a solution, but he'd already taken out a substantial loan against it. He was dumped by the girlfriend, lost trust at his job, and now apparently lives in an even worse apartment than before. I knew all this because Linda came over with some sweets, complaining endlessly. She claimed she was apologizing, but it seemed her true intent was to live with us.
I'll pay for my stay from my pension.
Of course, we politely declined with a smile and sent her on her way.
I'm home.
Every time I come home, my son's smiling face greets me. Oh, welcome back. We've got beef stew for dinner tonight.
Wow, you made dinner? Thanks.
Yeah, I managed to get off work on time today. My son tastes a bit from the plate I hand him and gives a thumbs up, saying,
This is good.
Awesome. John and I, a close-knit father and son, are living a harmonious life. John has gotten a lot healthier, having recovered from some swelling issues. Can you pack lunch for me again tomorrow? I'm gonna wake up early and help out.
You can eat out sometimes, you know?
Nah, your lunches are the best. Saying that, John grinned like a little